is up, my ninjas? I'm Strydent, and welcome to another video. So, it's been a long time. We have all collected a lot of G.I. Joes. We've seen a lot of good ones, a lot of bad ones, a lot of mediocre ones. In recent years, there's been a weird flip from 4-inch to 6-inch, and yet for me, and for many of us, there's a lot of people like me, we all go back to these 4-inch figures. One of the figures that has inspired me the most, the one that I play with the most, and one that I might want to put very high up on the list of my favorite Joe figures of all time, would happen to be the subject of today's video, which is the guy you're looking at right here. And this is the G.I.Joe Retaliation Joe Trooper. Now, I've done a lot with this figure. You've seen him a lot. I want to kind of celebrate this figure today because, you know, there's a lot of figures that come and go. There's a lot of figures that kind of capture our imagination, but it's not every day that you have a Joe that 10 years later still blows away what they're putting out now. And it even compares to the larger figures in terms of detail, accessories, just theme in general. You know, if they do one of these in 6-inch, I'm going to be in trouble because I'm definitely going to have to end up buying, you know, 5 or 6 of them so I can make my team in 6-inch. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's one of those things where it's just something to really take, you know, heed of, pay attention to. And then, you know, if you love this kind of shit, definitely add this thing to your collection because you won't regret it. It's a fun-ass figure. So anyway, let's knuckle up and jump into it. So, the Joe Trooper was released 10 years ago. It was part of the G.I. Joe Retaliation line. This figure was released in the first wave. I want to say the exact year was 2012. So, man, a long, long, long time ago. The figure just oozes a style that was actually a little bit better than what we saw in the Retaliation film. He had more of a near future aesthetic, and the helmet reminded so many of us of like Halo, you know what I mean? Detail wise, Homeboy has this army green suit, um, undersuit, I guess I should say, black vest that's very accommodating for all the articulation, especially around the shoulders. You have that universal shoulder, but it's a little bit bigger and oblong so that you can get the arms to cross over the chest a little bit better. You've got the silver on the knee pads, and then black boots and black gloves. Um, the visor is the only thing on the helmet that's painted anything differently on the helmeted head. But yeah, and then you have the blue scarf. Now, I'm going to get into more about the scarf when I get to the part about variants, because there was a variant of this figure. You can see there's an area that allows for the peg hole on the backpack, which is one of the better, you know, more amazing parts of this release. And that just about does it. There's an extremely good range on the knees and the elbows, and the same thing goes for the hands, the head, and the neck. The neck doesn't really move on its own; it doesn't move at all. But the head, the ball joint on the head is perfect. Same thing goes for the torso. It doesn't move very much, but it moves enough to give you a semblance of you know, proper movement. The gloves are pretty well detailed with knuckle dusters and a pad on the back of the hand, which is pretty cool. Same thing goes with the wrists. You can see you could put decals there for communication devices or something. Um, Pockets sculpted into the pants, wrinkles. There's multiple layers to the pants, and you can see that all on display really well there. The pants legs are folded over the boots, and I really like that. When you go back up looking at the armor on the back of the vest, it only covers the shoulder pads. You see there's a nice perfect space for where the shoulder goes in and allows for, you know, like I said, range of motion there. It also, being that it's all strappy and whatnot, it's lighter and there's not a lot in the way for, posability, as well as for the peg that goes into the back. From the side, you can see more of that opening that gives the arm all the freedom to move, as well as it does. So, as I mentioned before, there were two variants or two variations of the figure, or running changes, as people like to call them. The blue is the one we refer to as version A, and the second version, which is version B, is tan. Uh, and that's we're referring to both the color of the scarf and the color of their cloak. Um, I ended up with both of these very early on. I don't think there was like a big difference in the number of each. And if you guys remember, when I created Gunman and Gunsmith, who would later become Weaponsmith, they both sported both variations, so you could easily tell them apart. And throughout the team of Fenris Company, you've seen, varying degrees of either or, because I have a bunch of both. I love it. It's just a little thing to give them some, differentiation if you want to, army build these as your Joe Troopers. One of the things that sets this guy apart from like tons of other figures is this arsenal that this guy comes with. He is a walking arsenal, which is awesome because if you choose to use them as support, then they're carrying so much gear that they can back up the other Joes. If you make them their own entity, like I did, they just have a good, clear cut set of weapons for just about any situation, and your imagination can take over with the rest. Here are the variant cloaks and gas masks. I forgot to mention that before. They both match the scarves on the two variants. And before we even go further into more of the arsenal, I want to get that the figure comes with an alternate head, an unmasked head or unhelmeted head. Just in case you want to switch it up, have some with the helmet on and some with their face exposed. It's a decent face. I think I used it for somebody in my ranks. One of the flyboys probably. Okay, so first we have the pistols. These are the smaller pistols. I guess the 9 millis we could call them. Also, he's wearing a gas mask. You can see how it looks on the figure. Um, it's nice, and like I said, it comes in the two different colors, like I showed a few slides back. But anyway, here is the Beef Eater, big ass 6-shooter pistol. Could be 12, could be a pulse pistol, laser pistol, whatever you want. Here is the assault rifle with the underslung grenade launcher, or it could be an underslung shotgun. It looks like a grenade launcher, so that's what that's how we use it. You just look at how he holds the rifle. That's one of the most important parts. The pistols, the rifles. Look at the amount of articulation afforded this figure. That helps make it, what I've been telling you for years. Um, Also, here's a sniper rifle. So anytime you want to get in there with some long range business, there you go. And he's got his cloak on. I always pretend it's an optical camo cloak, and that the helmet would have optical camo properties when combined with the cloak, so he could disappear in plain sight. And then lastly, you have the grenade launcher. So you want to get smoke in there, you want to get gas or something, or you want to shoot just regular grenades. There you go. And then, when you're out of everything else, you always have your knives. These knives are nice. One of the criticisms I do have is that sometimes after you've put the other weapons in their hands, you have to squeeze their hands to close in so that the grip will be better. But man, these look wonderful. And the fact that he has the proper articulation in the wrists to actually use the knives, it's just perfect. At least on the right hand. So there's no complaints there, none whatsoever. And you also have a place to store them right on the side. Both knives, the skinny one goes on the top, the bigger one goes on the bottom. And that comes in like really, really, really handy. Then, you can also keep him, based on his articulation or due to that articulation, you can have him with that tactical stance with his knife and his rifle. There's the shovel. You gotta have the shovel for those random situations where you may need to dig your way out of something, or you ran out of fucking ammunition, you dropped your knives, or you were forced to leave the knives behind, and you gotta fucking clock a zombie, a fucking, what do they call that? Chemical Z Latin Cobra Trooper with your shovel. That's all you got. Gotta do what you gotta do. Next up, we have just full storage, man. You can carry almost everything on your Joe. I mean, you literally can put what the one thing he can't carry that doesn't have a place on the, backpack itself in his hands, and then have everything else in its place on his person. And that's fucking phenomenal because most of the time with Joes, you have to pick or choose what ammunition, I mean, what, weapons you want to have on his person. What stuff do you want to put where? I mean, look at the knives. Nicely tucked away on his side. Sometimes they do fall off, but they tend to stay on really well most of the time. It's just nice to have these options because it makes your character feel more tactical. It makes them feel more like a full on unit. You know what I'm saying? It makes them feel like the legit cavalry. And this is partially why I opted to use these guys as the basis for Fenris Company, because they just didn't feel exactly like what we normally get with Joes. They felt a little bit more thought out, a little bit more versatile, because like you could just decide that one of these guys is the sniper and just don't give him all the other shit. You could also interchange the weapons. You know what I mean? Like where you have the two rifles on the sides of the backpack, you could put other rifles in there as long as the handles fit in that space. Same goes for the pistols that are, sheet or holstered on the very back of the backpack. You can put other pistols in there, just as long as one set of pistols are smaller and the others are larger. It's just, it's the way that it should be. You're given a lot of options, and I mean, it makes it more fun. I mean, who wants to play with fucking soldiers, hardcore soldiers, especially if you're going to use these guys as your support, who can't really support the Joes? I mean, previous green shirts didn't even come with backpacks to carry all their shit. They just came with their laser rifles and then a pistol and I think a knife. They didn't even have armor on. You know what I mean? Like, these guys are legit. Your Steel Brigades had a lot of weaponry but didn't have anywhere to put all of it. They've answered all that here. So, this is part of what makes me geek out so hard about this figure. He's just the total package, like fucking Lex Luger. The total fucking package. And it's like, I mean, this was a $10 figure. Maybe he was 12. I think he was 10, actually. There is really not even a contest. People will argue, and if they want to, that's fine. As far as I'm concerned, this one is the full fucking package. From head to toe, he just has everything. Um, Tons of weapons, storage for all the weapons, maybe give or take one of the weapons, um, play pattern options like you wouldn't believe. I mean, he just does a lot more than what you typically see. And this is the figure that led me to create Fenris Company. I had always wanted to create my own team, and this figure just hit all the spots. I mean, they were decidedly ground pounders. You know what I mean? They were like really army, really marine-ish. The standard army man design. You know what I'm saying? With the greens, the Fenris greens, as we like to call them. The fact that his vest is not too big and it had scoops cut in so that the arms could actually come in front. That also helps to add to the articulation, which I'm going to go into all these things in just a few minutes. But let's take a look real quick at what I'm comparing it to, how I came to this conclusion. On the Joe side, you have these guys. This here
is the other Retaliation Joe Trooper. He is a very basic figure. Essentially, at this point in time, the two troopers were these two. You had the Cobra Trooper from Retaliation, and you had the Joe Trooper from Retaliation. And both of them had similarities in their design. Very simple similarities, but I think they made sense. At first, we were all up in arms about what they were trying to do with these figures, but once you get them in hand and you play with them, as I showed you in the review, you'll see kind of more about what they're capable of, what they do, what's awesome about them. A big thing here is they cut the articulation from the knee down. So there's no boot articulation, no, pivot, swivel, or point. They can't do anything. They're stationary. But what's awesome about that is you pick them up and you put them standing somewhere, they stand. It's no problem. Unlike many of the other figures where getting them to stand is a pain in the ass because either they lean too much on the back of their body or they the joint in the in the ankle doesn't point enough down, going downward. I'll just show you what I'm talking about. Either it doesn't go enough downward like this, or it doesn't go enough upward like so. So from time to time, that becomes a problem. Sometimes you'll have them standing too much like this, where they lean forward too much, and the detents don't allow for the feet to like flatten out properly. So you have to position them in a weird way to get them to stand up. I've gotten good at it, so you're not going to see it so much, but it's the one criticism that I do have for the Retaliation Joe Trooper. But these were what you got. And while I thought at first it was kind of shitty, and I thought like, man, these guys are cheap cash-ins. They were $10, and they came with a bunch of weapons, and they're very base level figures. Now I use these guys as the UNISEC infantry. It's just a small team of soldiers that they're the first response team. They show up. If they can deal with it, then there's no call to the strike teams in the Fenris verse. But if they can't, then we call in the big guns. Same thing with these Cobra guys. I use these guys as just a slightly heavier blue shirts. You know what I mean? You have your security forces. Why do you call them security forces? Because it says security on his back. So you have security forces. I've got tons of these guys. I was very fortunate to find them in various places when I was doing toy hunts back in the day. But security forces show up first. Then you have these guys backing up the security forces. Then you have the blue shirts that come in. If they can't deal with it, you have your slightly heavier infantry, which is your Vipers. Then if you have like special situations, shocks will show up and they will kind of restore order. And then if it's really bad, you've got the special forces back there on the side, as you can see. And then the personal guard of Cobra Commander are the Jormungand. Jormungand is the world snake in Norse mythology, so that's where they get their name from. But you kind of get where I'm going with this. There's escalation, and as you can see, I have more Cobra troops than I do Joe troops, and that's by design. I wanted the Joes to always be outnumbered. Never outgunned, always outnumbered. Because I feel like that makes for the best kinds of battles, when the heroes are seemingly constantly, outnumbered, So my Cobras have all kinds of cool, and these aren't even all the forces, because I haven't shown you any of the snipers. I haven't shown you any of the Jungle Vipers, the Night Vipers, the Crimson Guards, the Crimson Shadows, any of that stuff. So, There's a lot of them. On the Joe side, you have this would be your standard Joe Trooper if you want. There, we do have green shirts. Those are my older son's. He's got them packed away because he no longer collects. He doesn't play with toys, quote unquote, but he plays with toys every time he comes home from college. Um, you have your Steel Brigades that will back up the Joe Troopers, Steel Brigade Delta. Then we have this Joe Trooper. This Joe Trooper in my universe is actually a character. We named him Caliber. Caliber is essentially a marksman, a Joe marksman, and he is the operator of the Thunderclap in my universe. But he is the other Joe Trooper. This is actually Retaliation Duke. He doubled as a Joe Trooper. You could actually put the gear, the different helmet on him, and it just turned him into a whole different character. I have a separate head that I used to use as Caliber, like an unmasked head. Over the years, I've kind of moved away from that because I'm not so hung up on my Joes anymore. I kind of have everything the way I want it. So most of the time, he's wearing this helmet. He's the only one who has this helmet on the Joe side. So he gets to be a unique character. But technically, he is a Joe Trooper, and these two would go hand in hand. Now, when you look at these two together, you can see many of the same elements. He also has elements that were found on Mouse. Mine is slightly customized because he had sleeves that were rolled up. Let me get a little closer so you can see all that. He had rolled up sleeves and stuff, and I changed that because Caliber is brown. So I wanted to make I had to hide parts, you know what I mean? I have brown forearms, but I didn't really want to focus on that. But anyway, base body is exactly the same. If you remember back in the day, I'll just show you. Okay, so if you remember this armor, I'll move his hands out the way so you can see it better. It's the same as what I wear as freaking weaponsmith. Now, where I got that from was Mouse. I want to say parts of that body that you're seeing there are Mouse. And then, so I mixed Mouse parts with Retaliation Duke, and that's what you got right there. But the point of the matter is, all of those figures use this same base body of the Joe Trooper, the Retaliation Joe Trooper right here. And it works, you know what I mean? Like it's a good looking body with very good articulation, very good styling, very good detailing. It works really well. So yeah, that was why it was a no-brainer for me to choose this to be my armor. You know what I'm saying?
It's so crazy to me that this figure had such a heavy impact on me, but when you look at reviews of the figure, all people could say is Master Chief, Master Chief. I don't know what it is with folks that collect this stuff, but it's sometimes it's so strange how limited their thinking is when given such amazing things. And then, when you look back and you see this kind of thing, there's no talk about the price for what you got in comparison to everything else that you got. There's no talk very much about how different this figure was from everything else that was offered in the Retaliation line. It's strange to me. It's extremely strange, and it makes me sad that people didn't fully appreciate this figure at the time of release. I did, as you can see with all those images, all these images that I'm showing you. This figure, single-handedly sparked my interest in G.I. Joe for a long time. You know what I mean? It kept me going for a long time, and I'm still fucking around with these figures. Still, to this day. Because they're so much fun to play with, and they're just so versatile. Yeah, they don't stand perfectly, and you have to do some things to get them to stand, perfectly. But I can forgive that when it does all the other things it does perfectly. There's not a vehicle I can't put this thing in or on that he doesn't just perfectly conform to. You know what I mean? Doesn't look like a pro driving. Um, there's not a situation I can't put this guy in where I can pose him to look ready or to look appropriate given the situation. It's just not even a question. It's so easy to do. Over the years, he's fit perfectly as, just members of the Joe team when I only had two of them, to, turning them into characters in their own right. And, I'm kind of happy that everyone else was underwhelmed by these. I saw reviews where people gave this figure a 7 out of 10, which isn't terrible, but it's like considering all the things these figures did, how did you get to a 7? How are you not more impressed with all of the things this figure can do? Does this figure look like a 7 to you guys? People said it was bland. People said, it's an underwhelming figure, and I'm like, what the fuck? I just did a video about expectations versus the perfection of what the figure actually set out to do, and the amount of people who missed what this figure set out to do is astonishing. You know, it's astonishing. But like I said before, I love it when the masses miss the point because that's more for me. You know what I mean? It's more for me, 100%. I do realize when I say stuff like that, I sound like a greedy kid. I'm like, more for me. But I don't care. People miss the point, and it's nice to see them miss the point when it's new, so that I can go out to the store and go get a thing. Because I managed to get so many of these guys. I think I have 8 or 9 of them. It may even be 10. I think so, because I do have one that's still all exactly the way it was, and then almost all the others have been customized into actual characters. And the amount of fun I've had with them, the amount of things I've done with them, the amount of inspiration I've received from just having them, man, it's a different level. These guys are easy to play with. They're easy to pose. They're man, I haven't found weapons that they don't use well. I mean, I guess small knives, sometimes they don't use very well. But that's most Joes, It's like most of the things that they don't do very well are things that all Joes seem to have problems doing, just by design. But yeah, this is one of those figures that it does the job so well that you just can't ignore how much quality you have here. You just can't. It's one of those things where, if you don't realize how good it is, I mean, it's fine. But when you look at these pictures and you see what I'm doing with it, it should help you recognize that there was a point in time where the folks at Hasbro, even though it seemed like they weren't giving a shit as a whole, there were little beacons of light and hope scattered throughout the releases, and this was one of the biggest ones. And I hope I was able to, show you guys the potential just from, the fun I've had with this figure. Because, man, this has been one of the best figures I think I've ever had from Hasbro, period. It just keeps on giving. You know what I'm saying? Um, and I almost hope that they do a classifieds version of him so I can get, a couple of these guys. At least make, Gunman. I mean, wow. Yeah, Gunman and Weaponsmith, in the larger scale. That'd be fun. But, yeah, this guy is worth every penny. These days, he goes for anywhere from $40 to $50. And some people get a little insane with the prices. And I don't know that I would spend that much on this guy. Not when you could just make a better or just as good of a figure out of a Marauders. Go on Marauders and get all the parts and just make your figure. You have options now. But at the time, we didn't have as many options. This came out before the Kickstarter for the Marauders task force. So yeah, for at that time, I would say this was easily the best that we had. Because it is an old school Joe, it is compatible with a lot of Marauder stuff, as you can see in some of the pictures. I customized my weaponsmith to have Marauder's parts intertwined with this body, and it works well. I don't have anything jutting up against anything else, and it doesn't feel like parts shouldn't be there. You know what I'm saying? Everything feels like it's working for the benefit of the whole. So there's always that. As far as when you compare these figures to Joy Toy stuff, say you want to put some paint on these guys, you could do that, and that will take them just that extra bit farther. You could fix the feet, replace the feet with some other type of like lower leg or something like that. When I used the Marauders ones, um, I ended up with some cool results. So there's that. Um, but overall, this is definitely one of those figures that you should not miss out on. And for me, I'm glad that I did not miss out on these guys. I'm glad that I did hunt down, I hunted down most of Retaliation with a few figures that they were too many of the same characters being released at the time. So, like, I didn't get the sleeveless Storm Shadow because I had the Ultimate Storm Shadow and I didn't need the same figure with just different arms. You know what I'm saying? I'm not collecting for that reason. There's some people who collect a catalog. I'm collecting because I actually want to play with these figures. And I like certain figures more than others, and I want to do things with those figures. I want to put them in situations similar to what I did when I was a kid, or what I would have done if I had access to these figures when I was a kid. Because I've told you, G.I. Joe and me, when I was a child, shit. I only ever had 5 Joes at any given time. And sometimes I want to say 2 or 3 of them were the same. You know what I mean? The same figure in varying varying stages of beat upness, varying stages of decay, mixed with other newer figures that didn't last because I played with them so much, you know. So having access to all these guys and finding them and hunting them down and all that, it was fun. Bonding with my son, actually bonding with both sons because Joe's kind of started to become scarce by the time little Strydent was born, but he did get to go on some toy hunts with me to go find a couple choice Joes. Um, 50th stuff was out, I want to say, when he was still a baby. So, to a toddler. So we were able to, he was able to go with me and see all that stuff and hunt down stuff at the toy show with me, actually. So, it's been fun. This has been a great all around source of fun and positivity for me and creativity, when it comes to coming up with a whole universe that kind of stemmed from these 2 fucking figures. 2 figures, the fucking blue variant and the tan variant. How often does something like that happen? I mean, I remember when I was a little kid, this was common, where you'd get a toy and then you just come up with stuff. That's what I was talking about with Sam when we were talking about the Cobra officer from Classifieds. That if you didn't know what Cobra was and someone got you one of those, he's pretty substantial. You could put him in your Star Wars Black Series collection and he would fit. You know what I mean? You could make him your main character in your universe and put him in a spaceship and make him go places. And dude is kind of armed to the nines to do all the things. That kind of creativity is what's been lacking from G.I. Joe for a long time. And in the early days, that was the thing they had in spades that made them stand out in comparison to everything else. You're seeing a little bit of that pop back up with the Classifieds. I will give them that. The design choices are pretty damn nice. But we gotta also have the 3 3/4 inch figures. We can't be paying $30 a pop for every 3 3/4 inch figure that's left. You know what I mean? That doesn't make any sense. The whole point is that they were cheaper. The whole point is that they're accessible to all ages. And the whole point is that, they're everywhere. You can use them with lots of different things. The fact that we have to look to specifically just the Classifieds for all the innovation and the style and the creativity, if you're not collecting Joy Toy and other $30 1/18 scale figures, kind of sucks. You know what I mean? Like, that's a lot of money to plop down just for these tiny figures. I mean, I'm invested. Don't get me wrong. I'm invested, and at some point you're gonna see my entries in the 1/18 scale world. But it would be nice to come back to this. You know what I'm saying? For them to go back to making some 1/18 scale figures with vision, not just figures to fill up the pegs or to exist in, one area of one particular store so they can say that they've had shit on the shelves. You know what I mean? In that scale. Like, really go for the gusto and give us a product that, blows our mind. Maybe do something like this or give me the go ahead so I can make, Fenner's company and, or something like it for G.I. Joe. I would do it in a heartbeat. We all thought G.I. Joe was dead a couple years back. And, looking at this, something like this could have legs, If they continued making figures this good, make a Cobra Trooper like this, make a Joe Trooper like this, and then build up new versions of, maybe take the classified designs and shrink them down, you got a winner on your hands, And they can have that one for free. So anyway, this has been my look back at the G.I. Joe Retaliation Joe Trooper by Hasbro from all the way back in 2012. This figure is such a marvel. I'm amazed at all the folks that slept on it. You can tell that people figured out down the road that it was better than what they initially said because all the prices on the secondary are fucking insane. But if you ever find one for under 40 or 50 bucks, maybe at a toy show or a thrift store or something like that, pick it up. Do all you can to refurbish the figure. The base figure itself is so good that you just can't miss out. His articulation is top notch. The range of motion is top notch because articulation by itself it's good, but range of motion is what really sells the figure. And then if you ever find one complete, the accessories are immaculate. The fact that you have all these accessories, I want to say it's 16 pieces altogether, and then you have a place to put all of it. It can be put on the figure, is nuts. Because I have close to 1,000 Joes, and I don't have many other figures that can do that well, There's a few that can put weapons on their person, but there are very few that can put them on their person well. So, like securely. So, you gotta love it when you get it and it's done well. It's just a shame that only, one figure has it to this level. I cannot name another figure. Actually, I can name one other figure, and that's the Ultimate Storm Shadow. That has this many weapons, maybe a little bit more, and you can put it all in one place, but essentially his is a box on his back. You just put everything in the box, close it, you know what I mean? And then put the swords and the sheaths and potentially the bow and arrow in there, and then boom, everything is on his person. But it's not the same as this. This is where you have very specific places to put everything, and it looks really good, So anyway, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Go back and take a look at the old videos I did of these figures. Check out the old video, the hardcore. Ooh, that was funny. It was awesome because it was fun. It was the birth of something else. And then, stay on the lookout for more stuff from me having to do with these guys. So, as always, that's it for me. You guys have been great. Peace outside.